Okay, with that, let's turn to Professor David Gushee and his Sacredness Paradigm. I am drawing from this really wonderful book of his. It's called The Sacredness of Human Life. And the subtitle is Why an Ancient Biblical Vision is Key to the World's Future. I think it's a 2013 book. I recommend it highly. Dr. David Gushee is Distinguished University Professor of Christian Ethics and the Director of the Center for Theology and Public Life at Mercer University. So he's a prolific author, a well-known public theologian, writes for broad audiences as well as for scholars. And I have the diagram here that we have used as our starting point for the shared understanding about the fundamental relationship between universal human dignity or worth and the human rights that the dignity gives rise to. So recall, this is a shared understanding, cross-cultural, secular, modern human rights movement. This is reflected in the Universal Declaration. That's these gold boxes. So Gushee in this book is writing about what he understands about this concept of dignity, and he considers dignity, based on his study of the linguistics of this word and others, he considers it to be a secular version of what was actually a richer theological concept, the sacredness of human life. Hence the title and focus of the book, Sacredness of Human Life. And by sacred, he means something that, quote, has been dedicated, consecrated, venerated, or hallowed. And he chooses this particular word because the origin signifies that the worth has been conferred or bestowed or granted. And the reference is granted by God. And so obviously in our diagram, sacredness for him is the deeper, more complete understanding, reflecting the theological roots of the concept. And this is in contrast to the word sanctity, which he finds has more of a moral connotation that suggests this is something that has been earned through piety. It's not that, he's saying. And he also points out that dignity has a connotation of status or rank that is not on point. For him, sacredness is most on point in describing the quality of human value and worth that is relevant, that we're exploring and seeking to honor here. Now, a little bit more about his sacredness paradigm, and he gives a number of factors. It's very clear, and I'm just giving really a high-level overview. To say something is sacred is to say it's different, special, set apart by one with the authority to make that sort of designation, authority that's accepted by a community. And again, this is a reference to specifically to a divine designation of all human life as sacred. Compelling reasons for the designation. And the designation of sacred, quote, evokes an attitude or posture of awe, of veneration, of honor or reverence. And it gives rise to moral obligations to treat the sacred with due respect and special care, and in particular to prevent any desecration. This comes with sanctions for violating the sacred. So this is overall the paradigm he sets out for sacredness, and then applying it to human life. If we ask, what does it mean to say that human life is sacred, Gushee provides this analytic definition, again, very clear. And I've added the bold here, so that's emphasis added, but otherwise the quote says, each and every human being has been set apart as being of elevated status and dignity. Each human being must be viewed with reverence, treated with due respect and care, with special attention to preventing any desecration or violation of a human being. So kind of a beautiful analytic definition that encapsulates what he discovers is included with this word dignity. And this word dignity is used very often. And when I'm teaching on this, I find that sometimes the word feels a little elusive, and people are looking for a more tangible definition. Dignity, by the way, is a word that has increased in popular usage in the post-World War II era with the rise of the modern human rights movement. So it's used more frequently. And here, Gushee is developing what he understands to be a richer theological understanding of the concept of sacredness that really is the theological meaning of which dignity is a secular version. Now, we go back to the sort of analytic diagram we're working with here. We've got the core relationship there of human dignity and sacredness. And I have it pointing to duties because that's really what you saw Gushee emphasizes when he's laying out this paradigm. But it does, he also acknowledges it does very much have implications for human rights. Now, similarly to Wolterstorff, Gushee is looking at God as the ultimate source of sacredness, of the ultimate source of the special value placed on human life. And he says, and I'm going to quote this too, this is very important. He says, God has consecrated each and every human being without exception and in all circumstances. I want to just kind of pause on that language, without exception and in all circumstances, as unique, incalculably precious being of elevated status and dignity. And I emphasize that because some of the comments, thoughtful comments that I received from folks over email in intervening weeks is sort of a concern, you know, if there is a religious foundation of human rights, what's the risk of the misuse, the misconstrual, a sort of a partial idea of rights that favors some over others? And so I think it's important to recognize all the theologians that I'm invoking in this workshop are pointing toward a universal shared human dignity that is not conditional in those ways. So they use different language for it, and I'm going to emphasize it. But Gushee says this is without exception and in all circumstances. He is looking at Scripture and the incarnation as the sources through which the sacredness is communicated, bestowed, or conferred. And as I mentioned, he finds that the sacred status of all humanity calls us all to assume a posture of reverence, to accept responsibility accordingly for treating human life as sacred, to offer due respect and care, to protect human life from destruction, and foster human flourishing. It's a paradigm that's very much aligned with a vision of respect for human rights. And Gushee, by the way, writes explicitly about human rights and expresses regard for the international legal system of human rights and acknowledges the Universal Declaration as reflecting this, this ideal. He's also really thoughtful about saying this paradigm should guide us in addressing the full range of social and political issues, which he certainly undertakes to do consistently and systematically. So saying any issue dealing with survival, security, flourishing of large numbers of human beings is a sacredness of life issue. And he names specifically that we're accustomed in, and I am really centering this on American political discourse in my own context. In the US, we hear sacredness around particular issues, human life prior to birth or end of life decisions. And Gushee is also applying it in those contexts and saying it should apply to the full range of social issues. So he wants to overcome the sort of the dualism of political polarization and apply this framework consistently.